Welcome to the Newsmakers Podcast. I'm Billy Hollowell, and this is a show where we go behind the headlines every day to bring you an interview with a pastor, entertainer, politician, or other notable news figure. And this is a show, again, it's daily, but it's based on our weekly TV show, which is also called Newsmakers. You can watch it on the CBN News channel and also on our YouTube page. And on this show, every day, we dive deep. It's a little more longer form with one of the people who you will often see on our Newsmakers show or across the CBN News platforms. On today's Newsmakers, school choice advocate Corey DeAngelis has been under fire over videos that have emerged from his past. Today he joins us to talk all about those past mistakes, what he makes of them, and what he plans to do moving forward. With no further ado, here is Corey DeAngelis. Corey, you have had an intense couple of weeks here. You've been in the headlines over the past week in particular, and not necessarily for the education work that you do. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But what has it been like to deal with the intensity of that?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough at first, but since I've been able to go public, it has been a huge turnaround. The public support from people on our side has been overwhelming, and it's been a great turnaround. But look, I put a public statement out there on X, formerly known as Twitter, just acknowledging what happened. Look, there are images and videos circulating of me from my college days about a decade ago that I'm not proud of. They're embarrassing. I'm nude in those videos and pictures. And, there's been a cancellation attempt from the left in particular and my political opponents trying to accuse me of hypocrisy. Their claims fall flat. There's a good article by Robbie Suave at Reason Magazine where he knocks down those accusations. But, look, I was kind of lured into this at a young age. I was an adult. I did make those decisions. I'm not proud of those decisions, but I can see how it can be deceptive, and the entire industry can be deceptive, especially for young people. I'm consistent. I don't want this kind of material to be in front of children in the K-12 education system before they are consenting adults. If I was able to be lured in to make bad decisions as a young adult in college, just imagine how much worse it could be for younger people. So I fought against this kind of material being included in the classroom. I've been consistent. I've changed my life. People change over time, and you can be consistent in supporting something for adults while vehemently opposing it for children. And Chris Rufo at the Manhattan Institute has been a huge supporter throughout this entire process. He has done 2 tweets in support of me. And he pointed out in his most recent one, quote, "Cancellation requires consent." Well, guess what? I do not consent to this smear campaign, mudslinging. It is something dug up from my past, something, again, I'm not proud of, and something that fuels my fire to keep this material away from children.
Well, yeah, and I think that is the part of this, when something comes out from somebody's past, a lot of us have things in our past we don't want to talk about, whether it's a family issue or whatever. There's all sorts of things that people have that they're personal to them. And you just said something very interesting that this has sort of fueled your passion for education. And before we get into that, I just want to double down a little bit on one of the things, the critics are saying, oh, you're a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite because you did this thing 10 years ago and now you're speaking out against it. And you spoke to that just now, but I want to come back to it because, in your view, do you see at all any sort of, to say, okay, well, you can't speak out for school choice or against this kind of material being there for kids while you have this in your past? I mean, just address that critique directly again.
Yeah, 1, people change over time, and 2, you can support something for adults while being against it for children. I mean, this doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, but this had nothing to do with logic from the very get-go. These are people who are my political opponents who wanted to try to cancel me and try to hurt me financially. They also came after my family. They wanted to cancel my family bond. My wife already knew about all of this stuff. It wasn't a surprise to her. She's been stronger than I have been throughout the entire process. She had people DMing her, even not just me. And these people wanted to try to tell her to get out of the marriage, to file for divorce. She never entertained any of that, obviously. But it just goes to show you how evil the other side can be. They don't just want to hurt you from an economic perspective, they want to rip your entire family apart. I had direct messages of people telling me to go kill myself because they know how hectic it could be during this time, and that it would be a lot quieter and a lot more peaceful if I were to just go with through the route of suicide, which is something I would never do. Again, cancellation requires consent. That is not something that I am ever going to consent to. I will continue fighting to fight. I'm not going away. And look, the same people, I mean, the funny part, the ironic part about all of this is the people calling me a hypocrite. They are the ones who are hypocrites here because they support this kind of material, not just for adults, but for children. And they would celebrate if this kind of material came out about someone on their side. They would support it. They'd say, "Go you! This is so fantastic. You're exploring your true self," is what they would say. And only because I disagree with them on the concept of the money following the child when it comes to K through 12 education, the concept of school choice is so dangerous to them. They went all out to come out again after me and to try to cancel me. It's not happening.
It's insane to hear that people would reach out to your wife, would reach out to try to send you these horrific messages as well. I'm not shocked by it, but at the same time, you think to yourself, what in the world is going on where something that is political or issues based, right? And then something personal coalesces and people use that personal thing to try to dismantle a family. I mean, that's a whole other level. And it kind of brings me back to this cancel culture question because you've known about cancel culture for a long time. We all do. But when you go through an experience like what you have been going through over the past week and a half or so, what have you learned maybe new? What new insight have you been given now that you personally have had to deal with sort of the cancel culture aspect of this, not just with the critics on the other side, but even some of the people maybe on your own side?
Well, you find out who your friends are. And so I had, even before I went public and was able to do that, I had so many friends within the movement calling me, texting me in a supportive way. I didn't have anybody calling me and saying, "Oh my goodness, how dare you do this and be part of our movement." It was people embracing me, wanting me to march on, come forward. If anything, people were telling me to go public sooner. They're like, "Come on, we want to rally behind you. We want to support you, but you got to lead on this and you need to come out and make a statement." I wanted to do so from much earlier than I did before, but I had reasons as to why I had to wait until I did so. It was such a breath of fresh air to finally turn that corner, to go public, and to have the embrace of my friends. And it also goes to show you that the trolls go away over time. And over time, when they start to bring it up, like even today, it hasn't even been that long, they're the ones that look like weirdos in my comments bringing up those things. This has mostly blown over. The people who bring it up, it seems like they're fixated or obsessed with looking at these pictures and videos of me, and they're the ones that look like the weird people at this point. So if you can weather the storm, look, all storms pass. If you can do it for a week or two, even in the moment, if it's hard, if you think this is never going to go away, if you think your life is ruined, that's not how it ends up, especially if you're a good person on the inside, if you have truly changed, if you admit to what you did, just own it and move on. Look, people don't want you to just like make stuff up. They don't want you um, to pretend something didn't happen. You got to own it and move on. I think that's very important too, and that's something that I did with my statement on Twitter. It's now been viewed more than 1 million times, and conservatives, libertarians have amplified that message with quote tweets and replies. Again, the outpouring of support has been just insane. It even surprised me. I knew there was a lot of support from the private phone calls I was getting, but to see this publicly has been just amazing. And this whole experience, look, you don't know why things happen, right? We don't know the master plan. There's only one person who knows that, one being who knows that. And I think sometimes things happen to you for a reason. Look, this is always part of my past. It's always something that in my subconscious I felt like my enemies could use this against me. Are they going to try to blackmail me over this because I'm in a political world? And it's a blessing in disguise. that this has come out. They can't use this against me anymore. They'll try, but it's not news anymore. It's already out there. And so I feel like I'm in a better position than I was before on that front. And it's also brought my family closer together. We were already rock solid. We already had that foundation of honesty and trust and just love for each other. And this is all, look, you do your wedding vows and you say through the good times and the bad, but until you go through the bad, do you actually fully understand what that means? And the positive nature of my wife through all of this and just her strength has only made me respect her even more as a person. I I I think she's stronger than me at this point, just seeing how she's dealt with all of this in such a good way, and has only embraced me and loved me through it all, through the good and the bad. And this is going to help our marriage. And this is also, look, I've been an agnostic my entire life, and this has brought me to having conversations about getting closer to the church. We started. My wife has also brought me closer to the church. She's a believer, and sh we're watching our local church on TV each Sunday. And the first time that we tuned in a couple weeks ago, just the things that the pastor was saying, it just brought me to tears. And that kind of was a sign for me. I started talking to one of my friends who is in the school choice movement, who's a Christian man, and he sent me this book that I was telling you about. And everything happens for a reason. I don't know where this will lead, but at this point, it's looking like it's turning into a positive experience. That there was negative experiences, there was a flood of evil for a period of time, but there are many benefits and things to be grateful for.
Well, it's interesting you bring up, church and faith too, because the entirety of that Christian message is about finding hope in Jesus, him forgiving sins, you getting a new start, right? And regardless of, where you were when this journey stopped, right? When you were doing this and you stopped doing it and you changed your life, what you're experiencing right now and this discussion about a changed life, a changed person, that's actually part of what this message is. What cancel culture is the opposite of that. It's actually the polar opposite. It doesn't allow people to move on from past mistakes. It doesn't give people a new beginning. It traps them in that moment where they made that mistake, and it tries to keep them there. And to your point, not allowing yourself to be kept there and recognizing that the better way is what we're talking about, is moving forward, right? I think that's incredibly powerful. And especially right now, when you look at the culture, and so many people, they have things in their past they're afraid of, right? And they live in that fear, and they don't feel like they can be honest and come forward and deal with those things. How are you hoping that maybe your journey right now helps some other young people, or even adults who are 60 years old and haven't maybe been able to deal with these things, maybe cope and deal?
Yeah, look, we live in a different time now, and the internet is forever. I mean, several decades ago, you could have done stupid things in college that weren't going to be on the internet forever, or they were a lot less likely for that to happen, right? We live in a time and age where everybody's watching all the time. Behave that way, and your life is going to be better for it. And I think that's something that you can learn from, and also to learn from my experience that if you do good things throughout your career, if you build that reputation, if you build that goodwill up, if you're not just if your friends come to help you and they're not paying you for that advice in the past, and you don't help them, you close the door on them, they're going to be less likely to support you in the future. I mean, so if you can build up your professional reputation, your goodwill with people, it will pay off in the end. And I think that's been part of my story as well. I've done so much to help so many other people in the past, professionally and personally. I never closed the door on my friends. They weren't going to close the door on me. And so building those relationships is really important. And look, you can change. You can change as a person. You can change. You can get, if you're in a bad situation right now, you can get out of it, like I got out of it. And you're always going to have people, if you're in the type of work that I'm in, which is political in nature, you're going to have people who want to destroy you. You need to understand that, and then also understand that you have friends as well.
Yeah.
And the people who want to destroy you, they may not be coming from um, an honest perspective. They're usually not. They may not be coming from a place of goodwill, and they might just be trying to cancel you, especially if you increase your prominence and you increase your voice in the arena. But look, don't if you've made a mistake in your past, what I would like to advise is don't be silent and sit down and shut up and be afraid. I had that fear in the back of my mind. I continued the fight for education freedom. I didn't let it that the chance of this coming out, I didn't let that stop my fight for more freedom in education, parental rights in education, for kids to have better opportunities than I had growing up, for kids to be able to go to a school that has the mission that's aligned with their family's values, to be able to go to a religious school and have the money follow the child. That didn't stop me. It shouldn't stop you. Everybody has a past, and maybe with mine coming out, that will hopefully embolden other people to say, hey, yes, I have a past too. There are things that my enemies could use against me, but it doesn't mean that I'm doomed forever.
Yeah, well, I want to close out in a few minutes on education and come to that because that's the entire premise of what you do. So I want to make sure we close out there. I have one more question for you, and I don't know, share as much as you want to, as much as you're comfortable on this. But there are a lot of parents maybe watching or listening to this, and maybe even some siblings or aunts or uncles or grandparents, and they may want to know what it was that kind of led you into it. What were the things that they need to be
Yeah.
looking out for, maybe that they can, whether it's this issue or some other negative pathway, maybe the lies you believe, the things that maybe led you there, anything you can share on that might be helpful to those people as they watch younger people in their lives.
Yeah, I got into it thinking I was going to be a fitness model. I was really into working out at the time. I had friends who really liked working out at the time. That was kind of my passion. And there were inquiries about that. I got into some fitness modeling, but it turned into something that turned into the mistake that I made. And the industry that tried to pull me in was deceptive in that they said it was going to be one thing. It actually ended up being something else. And then once you're in it, it's even harder to get out. I did get out very quickly, but it becomes even more difficult when they try to get you to do things that are against your own nature by waving tons of money as a carrot in front of you to try to get you to do things that you would have never thought in your wildest imagination that you would even consider doing. And once I started realizing that they were throwing an enormous amount of money, they wanted me to cross a line. I did not cross that line. I got out of it. And the line was engaging in types of activity with other men. Did not cross that line. If you guys want to look at the articles that have been written about it, it's not what the terms that they use. I would argue do not accurately reflect what actually happened in my videos. There are videos that I'm not proud of, but there was no touching of other people in those videos. They tried to get me to do that. They started offering tons of money to do that, and that's when I was like, okay, this is where they're going with this, and I got out of it. But they also said it was going to be marketed in a different way. It wasn't even the initial things that I did. So look, I would just say again, be careful about what's on what's captured of you, and make sure that when these kinds of inquiries come in, or if there's something like this going on in your life, make sure you talk to this kind of thing with your family. Your family's always going to have your best interest at heart. This is not something I really told my family about at the time. I wish I did. They probably would have counseled me in another way. I was a young adult. I thought I was cool. I thought I was going to be a fitness model. It turned into something else. And so just make sure, look, that doesn't mean you can't be, you can't get into fitness. That is not what I'm saying at all. I think fitness is great for your health. It'll help you live longer. But be careful when people are trying to give you attention and then try to get you to do things that you wouldn't otherwise want to do. So I would say have a family that's close to you, have a sense of community that you can talk to these about these things with, and just yeah, the more open you are with your community, the more likely you're going to go down the right path.
Well, yeah, be discerning, and absolutely that's helpful advice. Now I want to circle back here before we close out and talk about education, because obviously this is your passion. This is what you do, talking about school choice, advocating for that, really talking about the condition of the public schools in this country. This is such a loaded question, but I'm going to throw it to you because a lot of people will say, the public school system, it's such a mess. We can't fix it. What can we do? What do you say to those people? What is the step forward to fixing our schools in this country?
Well, we're winning on the issue of education freedom. So the concept of school choice, you can take your tax dollars meant for your child. In the government schools, we spend about $20,000 per kid per year. Average private school tuition is only about 12 or 13,000. I mean, we're not getting our money's worth, but the 12 states have now gone all in on school choice. You can take that money, a portion of it, to the public school if you want, but if not, you can take it to a private school, a religious school, charter school. You can use it for homeschooling expenses. You're more likely to get your values inculcated in that environment if you're choosing the environment than if you're relegated and assigned to a government-run institution that might not be aligned with your values. And so that's the good news on this. And it also creates competition. If you can take your money somewhere else, do you think the school board is going to call you a domestic terrorist anymore? You think they're going to cut off your mic when you're upset about something? They're going to listen to you. They'll have an incentive to listen to you. And so it breaks up the monopolistic system that is one size fits all, that by nature, by definition, is never going to meet the needs of individual families who disagree about how they want to raise their kids. There's other things you can do besides school choice as well. In California, they're trying to keep secrets from parents. This isn't the only state doing this, but it's the most well-known. In Gavin Newsom's California, they're fighting to keep secrets from parents about gender ideology. If a kid changes their gender in California, the state says that a local school district cannot require the school to tell parents about their child changing their gender at school. This is completely in conflict with the advice that I gave earlier, that you should be open with your family, the people you trust the most, so that they can guide you in the right direction. The school is not in the position to do that. They don't know you like your parents know you. And if you're not able, if you have a negative influence in the school and your parent doesn't know about it, that can set you down the wrong path as well. I'm on the board of Liberty Justice Center. We're actually representing the Republican-led school district, Chino Unified in California, who tried to pass a policy it was pretty simple. Don't keep secrets from parents. The state came down and tried to take away their local control to prevent them from doing that. But there are tweaks to the system like this that you can do to try to fight to have more of a say in your kids' education, even in the public school system. These aren't mutually exclusive policy proposals. You can advance school choice and have a say that way and have bottom-up accountability, but we can also tweak the public schools because a lot of people are still going to go to the public schools. We should still try to fix those as well. And in fact, when you do school choice, that provides pressure for the public schools to improve. We saw this in Florida. Since they've expanded school choice over the past couple of decades, they've gone from the bottom of the pack on the nation's report card to the top 5 after adjusting for student demographics. When you look at the most recent, even the most recent U.S. News and World Report rankings have Florida at number 1 on education. And guess what? They spend 27% less than the national average. Since 2000, the number of students in the system has only increased by about 5%, but the number of administrators in the system have increased by about 95%. The government
You had a chart. You had a chart that
I
you
did.
shared, yes, on social media that showed that.
It's
Why
my
do you
pinned
think
tweet right now?
Why is the administrative cost so high in your view? I mean, why has that
Yeah, look,
exploded the way that it has?
Elon Musk replied to it too with a 100 emoji. He agrees with this, so he's not, he gets it. Look, and so that's my pinned tweet right now. I posted it just yesterday, but the chart shows student enrollment flat, administrators just through the roof, and it's because it's become more of a jobs program for useless administrators and adults more than an education initiative for kids. Why is that? Because they have no incentive to spend additional dollars wisely. It doesn't go into the classroom. It goes to superintendents who make more than the president of the United States. There's a ton of them in my home state of Texas. And if they had accountability through people being able to vote with their feet somewhere else, if they're wasting the money, they're more likely to put that money in the classroom. And in fact, there are 5 studies finding that the more school choice you have, the higher salaries for public school teachers, because their employers start to have an incentive to say, if I don't want to lose this funding to another provider, I'm going to spend it on my most valuable resource, the teacher. And so if you look over time, since 1970 in the US, after adjusting for inflation, per student education funding has increased by about 170%. Have the outcomes gotten 170% better? No, they've gotten worse. And in fact, teacher salaries have only gone up by about 3% since 1970. Wow. I understand when teachers are upset about the school system, I get it. But the problem isn't with their competition, the private schools and the charter schools and the homeschool parents. The problem is that their employer has no incentive to do the right thing. And that doesn't mean that that'll never change. And it does change. School choice is a rising tide that lifts all boats. It's a win-win solution. It's good for parents, obviously, but it's also good for the teachers who are getting robbed by the administrators and the failing system that employs them.
All right. So Corey, where do you want people to go if people want to get more information on your work, on what you're doing on the education front? Where can they go to do that?
You can follow me on Twitter. Now X is at DeAngelis Corey. Hopefully Elon Musk will follow me after this episode too. He responded to my tweet. But you can also check out my book, The Parent Revolution, and we have a separate episode. You and I talked about this book in more detail. It's a national bestseller. It was endorsed by President Trump, and also on the back you can see Ted Cruz's endorsement. He says, you can ruin Randy Weingarten's day by reading this book. She's the head of the teachers union. I dedicated the book to her for overplaying her hand and inadvertently doing more to advance school choice and homeschooling, which is at an all-time high now, than anyone could have ever imagined. They messed up by fighting to keep the schools closed. They showed their true colors and showed parents what was happening in the classroom through remote learning, which we should have just called remotely learning. There wasn't a lot of learning going on, but families have woken up. They're never going back to sleep. And this parent revolution is going to continue. And so thank you, Billy, for having me. And I look forward to chatting with you more via text, and hopefully we can do another one of these episodes soon.
Appreciate your time. Thank you so much. That's all for today's Newsmakers podcast. Be sure to tune in for the next episode of the show, and also head over to the CBN News YouTube channel and the CBN News channel to watch Newsmakers every week. We'll see you soon.